Today is August 6, 2013, 2:10 p.m., and we're sitting with Mary Pat Dunn.
All right. Well,
all right. I am, to begin with, a happy 63 years old.
Okay.
That means I have lived this long, and I feel really good about being 63. And I was born in beautiful downtown Burbank, California.
Okay.
My dad helped get Disneyland started, worked with Walt Disney.
Right.
So we lived right down the street from Disneyland. And in fact, when my brother went to run away from home when he was 7 years old, he ran away to Disneyland. Wasn't too hard to find him. So it was kind of a neat childhood growing up because it was a very small town still. And so anyway, can I just say what I wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, that's
the one
fine.
thing that I wanted to talk about today was the changes I've seen in how children play and childhood, and how I think that is, just in my opinion, shaping our country and shaping our society, and as well as, of course, the lives themselves. And as you guys know, I am a great advocate of anything tech and new and using it to the full advantage, but at the same time, I think it's also has some real detrimental side effects, especially for children. And I guess when we were raising our kids, and I know this sounds like such an old person story, but it's true, and I have a daughter that's 34 now and one that's 24, and we didn't watch TV. We chose not to. We would sometimes rent a movie and put it on a VHS and watch it, but we just chose not to have TV in our home, and that was a choice we made when we got married 43 years ago. And I think, for one thing, it gave us a really chance to really develop a really strong marriage, because instead of sitting down and watching TV together, and then, of course, we have places where you couldn't even have TV. We lived where there wasn't even electricity sometimes. But it created that ambiance that would make you visit with each other and talk with each other and spend time together, and really quality time, and idealize and kind of set goals, and I don't know that. So I think not having television in our home has probably been instrumental, both in my 43-year marriage and probably in the development of my children. And maybe not. Maybe they felt really deprived. I noticed when they both moved out, the first thing they did was get a TV and hook up to the cable, you know. But as I've watched them, I think they realize also that it's good not to have too much TV, but that it really, unfortunately, can really shape us without us even realizing it. I mean, you could sit there in front of a program and say, well, that's just horrible, but you still watch it. And it's like Chinese drip torture, you know, or a water drip on a piece of sandstone. After a while, it makes an indentation. So anyway, when we were raising our kids here in Craig, we lived north of town, 25 acres, and the kids played outside. They played outside in the summer, in the fall, in the winter. And one thing that we noticed was people loved to have their children come play at our house, and the kids loved to play at our house. In fact, it was years later, after our kids were grown, one woman commented to me, she says, everybody loved to have their children come play at your house because they knew they would be outside, doing things outside. And that may sound really simplistic, but I think kids are missing that today. Unfortunately, because of the way society is today, moms do have to work. Most moms do. Some are fortunate not to have to. And so kids' time, by necessity, then has to be structured. We need to fill it up after school to make sure the kids are safe. They, either you get them a video game that you know will so enthrall them, or whatever, that they will stay on that until you get home from work, or you keep them in organized activities, sports, or whatever. And I think that's robbed children in a lot of ways of childhood, that time just to explore who they are, to take risks. I mean, a broken leg because you climbed up a tree because mom wasn't watching you, that's not an earth-shattering thing. Does that make sense? I mean,
Right.
yeah, it is at the time, but, I mean, that kid learned a real valuable lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, unless it was a very debilitating break. But what I'm trying to say is that time alone, that time outside, is a time to explore who you are, to problem solve, to face challenges that you might not face otherwise, and to figure out how to face those challenges. I think children are losing a chance to develop a lot of skills on their own and a lot of self-confidence because they don't have the opportunity to be outside like they used to.
Right.
And we've noticed a real change. You do not see the kids outside as much as you used to. And one thing we've noticed, there's a hill at the north end of town called Kathy Caesar. And when our kids were young, especially our older daughter, that was the hot spot in town on a winter day.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hot spot. And not so many people had snowmobiles then. And it's a long hill and it's steep. It's probably, I'll bet it's a mile long. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe 3/4, half mile. It is a long hill.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody would walk back up it and then sled back down and then walk back up it. And it was a day's activity, and you could count on it. And it was what you'd drive by and it'd be crowded. And by the time our second daughter came along 9 years later and we were there, by then a lot more people had snowmobiles or four-wheel drives, and so kids would sled down. And then they would get a ride back up. And there weren't nearly as many kids doing it. And nowadays you can drive back by that hill in the winter, and very few people are on the hill. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I mean, I know that sounds simplistic, but it's just indicative to me. So what are the kids doing? They're probably inside with a video game or on the computer. And I think that's exercise loss, that's fresh air loss, that's problem solving, that's just a whole bunch of stuff, interaction loss. Boy, I sound like a really old lady who is down on, and you know very well how much I use technology here at the museum, but I think it's also robbed, and I think it's robbing our kids, or we're allowing it to. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I guess that's all I want to say about kids.
That's fine. Well, what have you seen in Craig specifically with the youth population?
They're just not outdoors as much.
They're just not.
Right.
Okay.
In fact, the other day when I was driving down 6th Street, just on that particular day, I happened to pass two boys on bicycles. And there's a lot that happens when you're outside if you're not plugged into something that's really, really subconscious that you don't realize. I'm a strong proponent that I think there's a lot of healing qualities outside, a lot of healing in nature. The sounds, just being immersed outdoors, I think. And actually they've proven that. They said birdsong, for one thing, is something that has it has a property that when you're listening to birds, that does something to you. I think it kicks up the melatonin, serotonin, something or other. It really does do something to your psyche. And sunshine, they've proven, is also something that's really great in moderation. And all that stuff feeds you. So I'm going down the street the other day, driving down, and here's two boys. And they aren't real close to each other, but one was fiddling, they both had earphones on. And they were both plugged into their whatever it was they were carrying, their phone or their iPod or whatever. And I just thought, and they were little boys, little to me, one was probably maybe 7 or 8, the other maybe 10. And I thought, okay, they're missing the whole experience. Yeah, they're riding someplace on their bikes, but they're not hearing things, they're not visually taking in what's around them. Mm-hmm. They're certainly distracted, and so more in danger of being hit by a car than, but they're missing the whole experience that kids might have very subconsciously been imbibing in 40 years ago. And, maybe I'm wrong, and I guess that's why I want to say this, because maybe somebody will read this or whatever, or hear it or however 50 years from now and go, nope, kids are still the same, or go, wow, we have more obesity, or we have kids who are more dysfunctional. I mean, I don't know how to measure that, and I don't know if any studies have been done on it. This is just what a mom and a grandma has seen. And yet, given the chance, I think kids much prefer to be outside. I know my grandchildren do when they come out. They could, they really want to get outside. And Grandma, can we go down to the creek? Grandma, can we, So that's just my little sermon.
That's fine. Well, did you have your children in Craig?
Yes.
So what type of opportunities were there for them to do extracurricular activities outside of school?
Probably pretty much what they have now. I mean, there were the sports and stuff. What was interesting to me, now this is interesting, I'm glad you brought that up because both my daughters played softball. And when my older daughter played softball, and I'm not going to get the number of teams right, but let's say possibly at that time there were 15, on an average of 15 teams, depending on what age group she was playing in. It was you had to make sure to sign up early. You had to make sure to get your kid into those softball teams if you wanted them to play. And, I mean, it was a very busy little softball league here in Craig. And then by the time my second daughter came along, I think they had probably dwindled down maybe to 9 or 8 teams. And I don't know how many they have now, and I don't even think there's that many. I think they have a hard time getting enough girls to have some teams. And part of that could be soccer is more popular now. But I think it's just indicative also of moms are really, really busy. Because let's face it, baseball is probably second to horse racing. I've heard, it's the most popular thing. It's for sports or whatever. So, and then you didn't have to start your kids. They didn't have to be a killer t-ball player when they were 5 years old in order to keep progressing up. And now there's a lot of pressure. Kids have to start the organized sports earlier so that they can be functioning at a better level to be competitive when they're older. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think there is, as teachers and being in education, I think there's this strong push in making children as competitive as they can. They have to build every part of their skill base, no matter what they're doing from the youngest age they can. And I don't know that that's necessarily beneficial for the child. I think it teaches them they have to be a winner, and how do we define winner? And what is a winner? Is a winner someone who knows how to be quiet and listen to the birds and take solace in nature, or is a winner someone who won a trophy? These are just things I constantly think about. I see what you're saying.
And even in society, as we ourselves isolate ourselves from the outdoor experience, I think it hit me last year. We hadn't planted a big garden in a long time, and I decided I wanted to plant potatoes. This is kind of shifting away from kids, but again, it goes back to our whole perception and to our relationship to the outdoors. And so I decided I wanted to have a potato patch. And so I called the neighbors, because we don't have a rototiller, and asked them if their high school boy could come over and rototill it for me. Well, he was really busy, and he wasn't going to be able to do it for 2 weeks. And I was pretty impatient. I wanted to get those potatoes in the ground, and my husband was too busy, and he couldn't do it. So I thought about it, and that was hard ground, weedy, and everything. It hadn't packed down, hadn't been touched. We hadn't gardened in years and years. So finally one day I went out with a shovel, and I dug my potato patch all by myself. And I thought, here I am. At the time I was 62, which, I mean, I realize it's not a great age, but I'm not a spring chicken. And you would have thought I had dug up an acre by hand. I was thrilled. But carrying it further, then what I got to thinking about was how a gasoline motor almost robbed me of that sense of accomplishment, that sense of fulfillment, and the exercise and being outdoors, and the whole thing that went along with digging the potato patch up by hand almost got stolen by a high school boy with a rototiller at my behest, So, and I guess we can look at things, I look at things like that a lot. I think of, we had our house on the market a couple of years ago, and we chose to put it on the market at the height of the recession. We're so smart. It's okay. We're still here. That's fine. But one thing I felt kind of pressured that we didn't have is I looked around at other houses that were for sale where they all had automatic sprinkler systems. Well, my husband and I are so behind on some things that it had never even occurred to me to get an automatic sprinkler system. Number one, because we irrigate out of the creek. and they're standing and stuff. But that's overcomable. But so I got to thinking about automatic sprinkler systems, and I thought, a person can work in a dark little enclosed cubicle for probably, how many days out of that year to earn themselves a sprinkler system, which then, of course, will require a lot of maintenance, will break down, will cause you all sorts of headaches. Or that person can choose to take that day off for that number of days that it would take to pay for that sprinkler system and work outside in the sunshine dragging your hoses around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just realized that actually it was okay that we didn't have a sprinkler system, and if somebody else wanted one, they can put one in, because we all strive to get exercise, and we go to, we pay money to get exercise when it's right outside. I thought, my goodness, how blessed I am. I get to be outside dragging the hoses around in the sunshine, I'm going to move over this way because the wind's blowing that way today. Oh, got to do that. I mean, that is, if you look at it in the right frame of mind, that's fun. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but, it is. I'm getting exercise. I'm outside. And I do the same thing with hanging out my clothes. I mean, some places you can't even have a clothesline anymore. And how stupid is that?
Long Beach.
I mean, I didn't even have a dryer until I think I finally bought one because I thought it would be real expensive to operate, and I'm so cheap. And so we didn't get a dryer until I think maybe about 10 years ago. I think I've been married like 33, 34 years before and I washed my kids' diapers and hung them up and everything. I mean, because I use cloth diapers. And I finally did break down and get a dryer, and I have to admit, they're wonderful, especially in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
But I hang my laundry up any given day if it's a sunny day, and it's, because I don't know. I just do, because unless I don't have time, if I'm stressed for time or something, but I only work part-time, and to me that's a gift to be able to take your laundry out in the sunshine, the fresh air, and hang it up, and then you go back out and you take it back in, and it smells like a summer day when you're putting it away. Mm-hmm. And so I just think we've robbed ourselves of a lot of stuff, a lot of experiences that enrich us as people that we don't realize that we think we're better off because we live in a community where nobody can have a clothesline. Yeah. I'm sorry, I am really a dork. But
no, not at all.
That's my philosophy on outdoors and kids and us.
I think you bring up a good point, and that is we're moved to this technological age. We've got to be a little bit mindful of not overstepping, just kind of avoiding everything that we've done for so long.
Right.
With the outside.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're really missing the boat with the outdoors. I really do. I think we're healthier mentally, emotionally. I walk every day because my daughter got a dog when she was 15, and the dog was smart and knew I'd be a better mother. And it was a little dog that needs lots of exercise, so I had to take the dog for a walk every day. And I'm not power walker. I just walk. And my husband and I did this one particular hike up in the Rocky Mountains. It's about a 9-mile hike, and we do a 1,500 elevation gain in 4 miles and end up climbing up through a waterfall, and it's our favorite hike to do. And I always feel like such a woman. But I can do that hike better now than I could 10 years ago when we first got that little dog. And I think it's just because I'm not a power walker, but every single day I get out and walk. There's very rare a day that I miss walking, and it's just being outside. And it lifts my spirits, and so I really feel bad. You can cut that part off the tape. I just feel like I'm such a preacher about the outdoors, but I feel like, and that ties in again with childhood. We're missing the boat, and our kids are missing the boat. Mm-hmm. Stay up with the technological. As you came out to my house, I have a Microsoft Surface, which I dearly love, and I cook on a wood stove. So, and I would not give up my dryer. I do love my dryer now, but so.
That's very interesting. That's an interesting perspective.
Well, we pay all sorts of money to get out and go to either exercise club or hike or you know what I'm saying, to try to get exercise, get ourselves in shape, and excuse me, really want a sedentary lifestyle, or a lifestyle that's too tied to the technological stuff is really inhibits us just from having a more natural. Yeah, I am an old hippie, I guess.
Okay.
So, some really great. I've been thinking about this museum and how I wonder what is our generation or future generations going to have to put in a museum when everything is online, everything is, so technologically involved.
And you know what else? So poorly made. When I had never had a big mixer, even though I bake everything from scratch. And so probably about 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I can't remember, I finally decided I had room and I wanted a regular mixer, big one, instead of the handheld. And we went down to a little mall where everybody had, those like flea market malls, where people have stuff. And my husband gathered up all the old Sunbeam mixers, we lined them up, plugged them in, turned them all on, so he could hear which ones maybe the bearings were shot or they weren't running so well. And we bought a Sunbeam 1950s mixer for I think $25, and it runs like a champ. And you couldn't get one today that would run 55. So 40 years later, 50 years later, the mixer is still running strong. I have a 1940s hand mixer that runs like a champ. And how many times have I been through a Kmart little handheld mixer? They last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So
just to me, I look at how expendable everything is, and it's what will you have to put in, and I even look at my photographs that I am not printing out at home. I'm going, as opposed to 15 years ago when I carried my little film in and got it printed out all the time. So that's an interesting perspective. But you guys are really learning a lot from doing this.
Yeah,
in more ways than one, not just but just perspective. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to quit sermonizing on these stories?
No, that's fine.
I think I'm done.
It seems like an abrupt shift to go into a different topic, but
no,
if
let's
you don't
do
mind. Well, first off, why did you come to Craig?
We were starving to death in Oregon.
Okay.
My husband had finished, he went to school for forestry, and he was with the Forest Service, and it only took a few years for him to be tired of working for the government, and so we owned some property in eastern Oregon, and we moved there and proceeded to starve to death very quickly.
Okay.
I mean, he picked up jobs here and there, and just nothing would pan out, and so I had some relatives from Denver, from Colorado, Montrose, passed through, saw we were starving to death, and threw Harry into the back of their pickup truck for the return trip to Colorado because there was plenty of work here. They must have looked like Okies. And so he came out here, he had his little backpack, and he backpacked all over the state, and backpacked back home, hitchhiked back home, and got a call about a month later that there was a job in Craig, and so we moved here.
Wow.
So, and my cousins and my aunt and uncle lived here, and in Colorado, so we had family here, my grandparents, and so.
Okay.
It was fine, but it was better than starving, and so here we landed.
Okay.
And so we raised our kids here.
Okay. What year was that?
That was in 1980.
That's right. So you came at the middle end of the boom.
Yeah, it was getting towards the end of the boom.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like trying to find housing?
That was really interesting. We drove into town, and on a Sunday night, and the next morning he was talking to the motel guy, and I thought, well, I'm just going to call up the denomination church that we usually go to just to see when their services are for next Sunday, and called them. I call this a God thing. I called them, and he said, well, the pastor answered their house phone, and he said, oh, well, let me ask my wife. Just a minute. Well, she got on the phone. She goes, a house around the corner from us just came up for rent yesterday. It's been empty for months while they were cleaning and repainting, and it just came up for rent. And so, because there was not anything for rent in town. I don't know what we probably would have been living in a motel for a while.
Yeah.
So we got a wonderful little tiny, I think it was like 650 square feet.
Wow.
But it had all south windows, so I got lots of sunshine, and it had a fenced yard, and so we were very grateful for it, and an outrageous rent.
Interesting. Okay. And did you already have children at that time?
Our older daughter was just not even a year old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the town environment like?
We immediately immersed ourselves in the church,
right.
which was just right down the street, and actually it was it was a Nazarene church, and it didn't have a long history here, so almost all the people in the Nazarene church were also newcomers.
Oh, I think Carrie mentioned that.
And so it became a very close-knit little, it was a very nurturing, very thriving place to be, simply because it wasn't like you were trying to break into a church maybe that had been established for 75 or 80 years with a lot of old-timers who were feeling very threatened by a bunch of new people. So for me, it was okay. I mean, because that was right where we landed, and it was mostly newcomers like us, only been there maybe, 5-6 years. And so it was very, very nurturing and worked out really well.
Okay.
So we weren't aware of, not being wanted.
Yeah.
Do you still go attend that church?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but it just was where we had gone back in Oregon, and so we just kind of tried it out here, and it worked real well. In fact, the church is no longer in existence.
Oh, okay.
And a part of that very well could be that it didn't have that long-term base. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It was always a small church while we were part of it, and so yeah.
Okay. And then how quickly did? Oh, he was hired before.
He was hired before we came out, right?
Okay, and where did he work at first?
At the power plant.
It was at the power plant.
Yes, that's what brought us out here. He
hitchhiked
around the state looking for work and heard there was work up here, and so he came and applied up here. Mm-hmm.
And then, what was it like being at home, raising the family with the demanding hours at the power plant?
Well, I was not very smart. We were, as I told you, the first little house we rented was probably only 650 square feet. It's very small. The bedroom did not have a door. It had an archway into the living room, which was interesting with a child that wasn't even a year old yet, and to keep her quiet. And I remember one time I had scheduled the ladies to come over for a ladies' Bible study, and my husband's shift got changed and he was going to be working nights, and I just hung a blanket up and we still met in the living room. How could he sleep through that? I mean, how dorky was that? And that he couldn't even say, honey, you can't do this. I mean, shift work comes with its whole set of parameters that I think takes you a while to figure out. And I'm a slow learner. So, yeah, it was interesting to begin with. It didn't take us long, however, to figure out that wasn't acceptable.
Okay. And what was his regular, he started on shift schedule right away then?
Well, I think the first couple of months, I think he was on straight days. I can't remember how long he was on straight days, and then he got put on a crew, and at that point they had 3 shifts, which were really killers. They would work, we found them harder than later on when he went to 12. They were 8-hour shifts, and they would, I can't remember, 6, maybe 8 to 4. I don't remember what they were, but they were the 3 traditional 8-hour shifts.
Right.
And very, very hard because they're constantly changing, and it's hard on the family also. Though you do I fell into a rhythm, and I could kind of know exactly where we were in his month and the rotation, but very, very hard on them. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Right.
How hard that must have been for him to maintain any kind of balance, and how hard it is for men or women to maintain some kind of sense of balance when they're working that kind of shift work.
Right.
I think it's brutal. I think it takes a toll on the family. There's so many things they can't attend because they don't have weekends off for the children, children activities or other activities. I think it's really, really brutal. And as I started to realize that, as we've been here a number of years, started to read about it, the circadian rhythm it's called, where you try to establish sleep patterns that are healthy and eating patterns that kind of will help your body recoup and maintain. I really started taking it seriously. Well, I was always, I don't want to say I was a natural food person, but I always baked everything from scratch. In fact, I don't think I had probably bought a loaf of bread in the 10 years that we were married before I moved to Craig.
Wow.
You know, I'd always made my own bread. I just baked from scratch. We grew a big garden. That's what we did. And so, but I did quickly discover the benefits of a 7-Eleven, a convenience store around the corner from us.
Yeah.
So I began to really even take it more seriously, that I had to make sure he was fed right. And that his sleep was guarded. It took me a little while to figure that out, but I finally did catch on to that.
Okay.
And on his days off, I would try to make sure that he slept in as much as possible. I still do that. I'm still hoping, I guess, that he'll recoup all those years of sleep deprivation just so I can have him around longer.
Right.
And so, you know, like I said, I always was careful about what I fed us, but I just tried to be really, really conscious of what I could do to undergird him.
Right.
Kind of the Laplanders women's idea is, and this is really old-fashioned, but that's okay. Too bad. That's who I am.
Laplander, all finished, so.
Laplander women believe that they should, you know, traditionally anyway, really take care of the man, do all the chores they could, because he had to go out and fight the snows and get the meat. And so I wasn't the one working shift work, you know, and it was difficult at times. Yeah, there's just a lot of, sometimes it can accelerate tensions within the family if you've got some problems, because you're talking about an exhausted person, you know, and somebody whose life is just constantly reeling around. So it's difficult. Shift work can really be very trying on a family. And of course, my husband was a Vietnam vet, and he went through some extreme, probably the ugliest you could imagine in Vietnam. And so I know that's also part of his makeup. And then the shift work thrown into the mix, there were some difficult times.
For sure.
And I know we're probably not the only family that had really those stressful times compounded by shift work.
Well, you saying that kind of brings up another point. Did the community of Craig or businesses in Craig change their style of business to accommodate this shift work? I
don't believe so. No,
okay,
I don't.
No.
If you're talking about, for instance, hours of stores, I do not. No, I never saw any of that.
Okay.
Not that. I mean, and if they did, it just didn't work. I mean, I think when we first moved here, or maybe shortly after, I think City Market was open 24 hours a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I think they quit because it just wasn't. It didn't make any money.
Right.
It just wasn't worth it. And Safeway was too. I think they were open 24. Maybe not 24, but they were open much longer.
Is the Walmart open 24 hours a day?
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it is.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they all were.
And Kmart used to have a lot longer hours too. But no, I don't think there was ever. I didn't see any accommodation.
Okay.
But town was really traditional at that time. I mean, we still had, I think we had 2 or 3 shoe stores downtown, and I'm talking shoe stores. We had a men's store in the 70s and in the early 80s. We had women's dress shops. Downtown was a lot different. So we still had a lot of the traditional, you know, kind of downtown shopping.
Right.
And they wouldn't have been able to accommodate.
Okay. Now, what type of resources or activities were there available for a family to go if you wanted to go and do something with the community? Were there any gatherings or events, things like they used to have dances here in the armory, stuff like that?
I'm trying to remember. We were always so busy with our church, whatever church that was, that you know, that pretty much filled our lives. You know,
okay.
I mean, you know, Wednesday night Bible study, or, you know, ladies' Bible study, kids for the kids, things for the kids. But I think there's always been, I think the town's had plenty to offer, personally, for activities. If you want them, they're there. You know, I mean, there's things I don't do that I know people have done at home, bowling their whole lives here, bingo, you know, I mean, things that are way out beyond what I would do. I think there's always been dances, you know, several times during the year. We used to, when we lived way out, we lived like living out in Browns Park at one point, and we would always go to the Grange dances and things like that. But then when we came to Craig, we just didn't do that. We just didn't partake in it anymore, and just because we were busy enough as it was. So I don't think I've been to a dance since we've lived in Craig.
Oh, okay. Okay. But they were there.
Definitely. I always felt like there was more than enough for families to do, and kids, regardless of what some people may say.
Yeah. I've been interested. How did you get involved with the museum here?
It was sort of a fluke. And what is interesting is I come from a family of 8 kids, and I have a sister. It's funny. You wonder about DNA,
Yeah.
Because I have a brother who's a professor of history at SAC.
Right.
And I have a sister who actually was the head of the Western Studies department at Notre Dame, and then she also became, when she left academia, she became involved in she's done 2 books, and she's been a director of a museum. I have another sister who's also she lives down in Mexico, but she's involved with the history of architecture and everything down there.
Wow.
It's just like we all kind of gravitated towards history without realizing what we were up to.
Right.
And so at any rate, the kids were, I had one age 10 and one 19, and who was just leaving home. And I just felt like I wanted a part-time job. And so I went to the local little temporary job agency, and they said the museum was looking for someone, and just part-time. And I came. I had no museum experience, and I said, well, can you keep me busy? I asked them that in the interview, and I think they looked at each other and kind of laughed. As you can see, we're a very busy place.
Yeah.
So, and so that's how I hired on. Just started doing, they started me out just doing the session work, and then pretty soon I guess they saw that I kind of could handle exhibit work, and so it's been phenomenal for me because Dan, when I first came, he will tell you, I was a mouse. I was very insecure. I mean, I'm a professional artist, but in this kind of situation, I was very, and I would sit, I had a little typewriter desk and a little typewriter, and I'd sit there and be quiet. Everybody come in and talk, they do here. But I'd sit there and talk. I wouldn't say a word, I just keep talking because I'm getting paid. And so, but he was just phenomenal in allowing me to grow as a person here, and to utilize my artistic bent, my written skills that I have, to write. I just feel like I've exploded as a person here, and that's benefited me as an artist and a writer also.
Right.
But he has just been a gift in my life. He's an incredible person. He's not only a genius, and he really is. The way he handles people, the way he brings out the best in people, the way he manages the museum and directs it. But he's also very compassionate, and it's just amazing what I get to do.
Right.
So without a degree in museum work.
Right.
So, and I mean, I've grown to the point now. I mean, I'm borrowing things from Yale University last year, and I have the self-confidence to approach entities, to approach the Smithsonian, to approach whoever, and to procure the items we need for exhibits. And I never would have dreamed that of myself 17 years ago.
All right.
So it's been a real gift to be here, a real gift. And I'm sure you guys have seen what a special team we have, and what a neat feeling it is. And that's what I have to say this: you have been a gift also to us.
Thank you.
And I when you were just in the office the other day asking for something, and I'm just like, and all of a sudden I realized, and you're leaving. So I feel that way about both of you.
Thank you.
You've been a gift to us. You've been very gracious to fit into our small town and to our own very isolated way of thinking, because it is,
It kind of speaks to the accommodation you guys have shown us. Everything we've done, I've never felt like an outsider.
Good.
It's been very nice.
Good. Well, you've been a real gift, what you've accomplished for us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like specifically recorded? Any other stories?
I don't think so. I think we covered the shift worker and compassion for families, and I hope families in the future that might listen to this, I hope SciEP has something better for them.
They may.
They
may.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay.